It's Thursday, it's 6 o'clock, it's Crackerjack. No, it's the ABC of CBD. And Ollie has got end of term itis because he's going on holiday. He's like in a very, I know. And I'll tell you all about next week's show another time. But it's an absolute belter. So Ollie's on his travels. We don't know. Could be Brent Cross. Could be Blue Water. We just don't know. Could be Westfield. No idea.
Maybe. How you doing, Russ?
I'm all right. Thank you very much.
You feeling good today?
I'm feeling all right. I'm just, it is amazing. And just before we go and introduce our fabulous guest, which of course I have nothing to do with. Ollie finds all of these people have. I hope they've all helped you all over the world. But I got to tell you, it's changed my life. Changed my attitude, and opened my eyes to so much stuff. And I got to thank Ollie Mammon for all of that. Anyway, without further Edward ado, straight over to Ollie.
So, guys, episode 44. As Russ just said, we're actually going to take August off. I'm taking a little holiday. I'm not used to all of this show business. I'm not used to just working. No, basically, like with lockdown and everything, it's been a really hard 18 months. So I'm just looking forward to a month off just to clear my head. I've already started booking guests for September, and we've got some incredible guests we're going to roll out with next year and continue our education and our discussion into the world of CBD. Before we move on with today's episode, I want to play the word from the sponsor, and then we'll kind of get the whole 57 minutes or whatever we have left to kind of just smash it all out the park. So go on, Cena. I'm sure you've heard before that good quality CBD needs to be really, really expensive. This is the new view of CBD. A product created by users for users. A product at an affordable price, available everywhere, at any time, at the simple click of a button. Just CBD and MCT oil. No additives, no preservatives, and no flavor enhancers. It's a simple subscription-based service. The cleanest possible CBD delivered to your door for the lowest possible price. Your product, your rights for the lowest possible price. Yay! Oh, guys, I've really enjoyed doing this show over the last 44 weeks. I mean, it's definitely the funnest part of my week. Yeah, I'm not even joking. I love it. I love it so much. And now I've started doing it from my lab. It's officially the funnest thing I ever do in my lab. And
we're curious. I'm wearing my punter's hat. Why did you change back to your lab or changing?
So I changed back to my lab. To be honest, I never realized why I never did it from here in the first place. I kind of like this room. The internet signal's very strange in my house. It kind of changes depending on mood. For the last couple of weeks, we're struggling to get internet upstairs. I used to actually never be able to get internet in my lab, but now I can. It's like great. But so that's basically the main reason I'm doing it. Plus, it gives everyone a chance to see me in my natural setting. Everyone wants to see like lions
in your natural habitat.
Exactly. You want to see lions in the jungle. You want to see Russ on the radio. You want to see Ollie Mammon in the lab. That's basically what. Actually, you want to see Russ in an airplane. That's what you want to see.
No, you really don't.
That's what everyone wants.
Well, only if you turn left when you go up the gangplank. I can have several drinks as we take off. Let's dash up to Edinburgh. Veronica Curran, which is a lovely comment. This. Good evening, my lovely Thursday must-have. Great, so love that. So thank you.
I do love our fans. Yeah, I do love our fans.
Well, I don't know if they're fans, but they certainly
followers,
seem to enjoy
fans, listeners.
The listeners, the listeners, viewers, and the reaction. Your reaction to you has been fantastic. So I'm thrilled.
And the reaction to you as well, Russ, is fantastic. Everyone says to me that Russ has some patience. That's what everyone says to me. Russ has got some patience with you. So yeah, no, I'm always happy.
That's because I've got 4 kids. I'm used to it.
But it's also they look at me and they look at you and they go, how does he do it?
How does this work? How does this relationship work out?
Why has Russ brought this into his life? Why has he done this to himself?
I don't know. Anna Barbosa Lugo. That is my eyesight. Lugo, I beg your pardon. Anna Barbosa Lugo. We are your fan club. Lots of love. Or is it laugh out loud? I never know. Anyway, Anna, thank you very much.
Laugh out loud.
I don't know what it means. You crazy kids.
Love Ollie lots.
Yeah, I never thought of that. I never thought.
Love
yeah,
Ollie
right.
lots. That's why I always call it.
Must be that. Must be love Ollie lots. Of course, I'm a fool to myself not to realise it.
So we've got an incredible guest today. His name's Edward Granger. He's actually a friend of mine. So this is our last.
So he's brave. So he's before anything else, he's a brave bloke.
So this is our last episode on the subject of epilepsy. Well, number one, because I'm taking a holiday, and B, when we come back in September, I've got a few other subjects which I want to kind of start discussing. The title of today is called A 7-Year Journey to a Prescription. Now, first of all, let me start by saying thank you so much to everyone who has made this show who's made this show so great this year. We've had a terrific 44 episodes for all of our guests from the cannabis industry across the spectrum of patients, suppliers, advocates, parent warriors, experts, lawyers, doctors, professors, specialist educators, farmers, cannapreneurs, and generally awesome people. You've all made this show what it is. Yeah. And Russ and Men's Radio Station, thank you for giving us, giving our blossoming, growing green community a platform and a voice. Sina, thank you so much for being the silent hero of the show. Without Sina, our producer, none of this would ever happen. So I just want to say thank you to everyone before I disappear for the summer. Now,
Sina produces this on his private yacht, by the way, in Malibu. That's what he's done very, very well.
Without all of the above mentioned.
Right. Oh, let's say hello to, crazy name, crazy gal, Eve Phantom. Says hello. Hello, Eve Phantom. There we go.
So without all of the above mentioned and all of the listeners, this show wouldn't be a show, and it would just be me talking by myself in the lab. So thank you all for giving me a place to talk and share. Thank you for letting me help guide you, and thank you for following and helping in every capacity, whether you've been involved or just supported. So most of the stories we have shared over the past 11 months are focused on people who want to share their story, people who have made it their role and their influence, have made it their role to influence a generation. And a lot of our guests have had other media focus. Or they're physically invested in the industry to make formidable change one way or another. In our final episode of the season, before we take a short summer break, and in our final episode on epilepsy awareness, we are joined this week by a slightly different guest. Someone whose story is not known, someone who is not on the circuit, someone who is the basic everyman, the simple every patient. We are joined today by someone who has lived a journey, who has suffered a journey, and who has only recently started to receive the help he craves. Ed Granger has been a friend of mine for about 20 years, and I've seen him go through the wars. Having been first diagnosed at age 16, Ed was classified as having an epileptic disorder. He was having minor seizures regularly, but he was experiencing 1 or 2 major seizures a year. Ed was given strong pharmaceuticals. This was the beginning. As Ed phrases it, his spectrum of seizures got worse between the ages of 16 and 22, when he was having multiple seizures and negative auras on a regular basis.
Negative what? Sorry, say that again.
Like negative auras. He will explain what all of this means.
Okay.
Today, we're actually going to get more of an insight into what an epileptic sufferer actually feels. We've discussed it a lot recently, but we haven't really asked the question of what is a seizure actually like. Today, that's going to be answered. And
Ed will be listened to by, we've got Scotland, we've got Edinburgh, and now we're dashing across all the way to Santa Monica, California, US of A. Gloria Miller, hi Glo, morning chappies, she says. So good morning, darling, to you over in lovely Santa Monica.
So as Ed phrased it, his spectrum of seizures became worse between the ages of 16 and 22 when he was having these negative auras and multiple seizures. The epilepsy was getting worse. This is where the pharmaceuticals were upped, and Ed was encouraged to stop consuming cannabis. Like a lot of 22-year-old kids, Ed was a recreational cannabis user, and like most good patients, Ed put his complete faith, belief, and trust and opinions into the medical experts who were guiding him. Okay, so when he was advised to stop consuming cannabis at age 22, he did. Ed started the regimen of more pharmaceuticals, and between the ages of 22 and 27, the seizures became even worse. As the doctors said, epilepsy can get worse and worse if the correct treatment is not found. So Ed put more faith into the doctors and carried on trusting you. After years of taking up to 10 pharmaceutical drugs, the doctors recommended brain surgery to identify and remove any scarring from Ed's brain. Like any good patient, Ed listened to his neurologists and listened to his medical practitioners, and he underwent some massively invasive brain surgery. The choice from the doctors was continue as you are, or we can try and remove the problem. It was exploratory surgery. The doctors were very open about that. However, there was confidence portrayed by the doctor that the surgery would make Ed better.
Yeah.
But Ed, being the perfect patient who listened, agreed. Then brain surgery happened at age 28. Ed is now 35 years old, and I would like to welcome him on to get to fill in the blanks between the ages of 28 post-brain surgery and 35 now. We call it the 7-year journey to a legal prescription, and Ed has not had an easy 7 years. However, he has found hope. His story is more common than not. The advice he received was more common than not. His journey is probably similar to many other epileptic sufferers out there, and I would like to welcome him on to continue his story and what has happened to him over the last several years.
Hi guys.
Is that fair?
Absolutely.
Yeah, just making sure. I didn't want to, like you said, I didn't want to underdo it, didn't want to overdo it, but you've had a
been
shit
around
run
for most of it. Yeah,
I've been around for quite a lot of it, man. Yeah.
Up, down, up, down. That's life, though, no? We learn in
Well,
different ways.
it's good that you're so stoic about it. But I had no idea about the brain surgery. Wow. Anyway, we'll get on to it. I don't
Ed is
jump
the
ahead.
most beautiful soul you're ever going to meet. Okay, I mean, like this
In a good mood.
in a good mood, in a bad mood, terrible. But when he's in a good mood, it's the most beautiful soul you're ever going to meet. And he's been basically, he's basically been taken on this journey. And, I think it's very important that we share this story because, where he is now is very pertinent and relevant to our industry.
Yeah.
So I just thought I'd say, so Ed, thank you for joining us. Thank you for coming. I'm really
My
happy
pleasure.
you're here.
Thank you for
I think it's
having me.
amazing to have
Thank
you.
for having
Our
me.
pleasure.
So let's start this. So 7 years ago, you came out of surgery. What did you think was going to happen?
Obviously, there was small doubts and there was a lot of fear because just the concept of brain surgery.
Yeah.
But I had a lot of love and support around me in respect to family, and the doctors seemed very thorough. They were very thorough. They were as thorough as they could be. So yeah, I went with it.
And sorry, carry on.
No, go ahead.
And what actually happened?
It was a long process to build up to it. They did many tests. They eventually actually isolated where it was coming from, which was my hippocampus, my right hippocampus, and assumed they had an 80% certainty that all of the epilepsy was due to scarring on my right hand side. And they gave me a 70 to 80% chance that if they were able to remove that, which was the majority of my hippocampus and temporal lobe, that it would at least make it better, but 80% chance it could actually cure me. So I went with it. And unfortunately, almost immediately after the surgery, I knew something wasn't right because I was having a different kind of aura, different builds up to the seizures. It's almost...
Ed, explain for the uninitiated, i.e. me, aura. What do you mean by that?
It's almost a trigger, a feeling that a seizure is coming. But the more you read into it, I think they're actually just very small seizures. Mine almost act as little clusters. So they're little explosions in the mind that occasionally, for me, would end up in a status epilepticus, which is a very sustained grand mal seizure. So that's where the danger was for me.
Right.
If you had to, sorry, go on, carry on.
At the worst points in my epilepsy, I was having up to 80 seizures a day.
Oh my God, 80?
But I wasn't aware of that. I always knew that I was a little bit spacey and found it hard to settle and was always anxious. So they're my auras. And what the EEG and the MR and the video telemetries were picking up were seizures.
Wow.
So when you feel sorry, go on, Russ, go on.
No,
go on.
I'm so sorry, but you seem like a very open guy, and you're a pal of Ollie's. So
Absolutely.
I'm gonna
He's
dive
a pal
in.
of yours as well, Russ. He loves you, mate. He's a big fan of yours.
Well, we've only known each other for 14
I
minutes.
watch you every week. You make me smile very much.
Oh, well, you've got to get out more. Here's the thing: you're leading your life, and what do you get forgive me, I know this sounds really crass, but do you get a tingling? Do your eyes get blurry? How do you know something's going to happen?
What do you actually feel?
Yeah, what do you actually experience?
You're very articulate. You're super articulate. So, like from an artist perspective, how would you show the aura? Do you understand what I mean? Like, how would you describe an aura using words?
If the best way to describe it that I've ever found is that it's almost as if your soul leaves your body.
Ooh.
That for a moment, time is not almost, time is irrelevant. The space around you becomes shrinks, and your physical presence isn't as lucid. So you feel away from yourself. That can also though be, it's different for different people.
Yeah.
That's my strongest version of an aura. They can also just be a slight bit of anxiety here, which I'm sure everybody
has that. I think everybody
exactly.
has that, and I think the last 18 months has pushed people's anxiety off the blooming scale. It's cranked up to about 11 on a scale
you
of 10.
also told him to get out more, which is like the biggest, like, what's it called? It's the biggest lie in the world at the moment, because there's nowhere to go. Or now there is. But over the last 44 weeks, people have been trapped.
You have to think about
our show.
Epilepsy is a threshold. Everybody has the potential to have an epileptic seizure.
Right.
Certain brains, I'm not even sure if the top neurologists fully understand why, they have a lower threshold for seizures. And I've always had that. I was unwell as a child, and just as I got older, whatever threshold I did have reduced. But I had surgery and they improved it. That's something that I have to be very, very brash in.
I don't want to go back in past too much, but I just had a little memory. So you used to fall out of bed a lot as a kid.
Absolutely.
And you used to wake up on the floor. And I remember, I feel like I remember being 14. If I was 14, you were 16, and your mum was, and your dad was speaking. So I'm like, he's fallen out of bed again. There's something wrong. And I just remember,
I was aware, I think, of auras from the age of 12 or 13. Okay. So probably when puberty really started kicking in is when I really started to feel different. That floating sensation above my body was very strong then. Cool. But no comparison.
Did you ever fear? Did you ever fear? So this is just fascinating stuff, because
it's different, isn't it?
We've not really dug in. We've not really drilled down.
We haven't also spoken to someone who's lived it, except for Callie Seaman. But when we had Callie Seaman on, when we had Dr. Callie Seaman on, we didn't have this conversation with her. We discussed more about, like other aspects of the cannabis industry. So I mean, I think it's really important to kind of get an idea as to what these poor people are suffering. What's actually going on.
What we're talking about here. So during these experiences, and let's just say you felt you were leaving your body, I can all right, we can relate to that. Did you ever think, I'm not going to get back?
Yes.
Well, that would be my fear. My biggest fear is, oh Christ, I'm stuck here.
Ross, that's, in my opinion, I think that's what rules a lot of epileptics' lives. The fear of having a seizure.
Really?
Because once you've been to that, once you've lost control, I think everybody, if you've lost control of a car and you weren't perhaps lucid while you were driving, imagine that if that's your body. And
I can well imagine it, yes.
For me, it's going to bed at night, but some people don't know when they're going to seize.
Are you allowed to, curious, are you allowed to drive? You're not allowed to drive now?
No, and I have no intention to.
No, okay.
He's smart. He knows.
Yeah.
Well, no, you could. I mean, not just to yourself, but what the damage you could do to
at risk. Exactly. For me,
somebody walking along the pavement. So that'd be dreadful.
I'm lucky. I live, in London. And
Edward, you once said something to me, especially during one of your worst moments. You said, sometimes you go to sleep at night and you don't know if you're going to wake up in the morning.
That's for me when that's what I've had to learn to get over.
It's a horrible feeling when you're, like epileptic adults who are kind of going through this. It's not, parents fear for their children when their children are epileptic, but to be able to speak to someone who has that fear themselves, do you know what I mean? As an adult,
my family, I'm blessed that my family still worry about me. So I still get the text once I've woken up. Good morning, how are you? And I know that that's my family just making sure I'm okay, which is a beautiful thing. But
it is a great thing. It's very important to be. It's very important to be supported and know there's people out there for you. That's a huge part of human nature, and one of the reasons why the last 18 months has been such a nightmare. Because I think
lack
a lot of
family
people,
contact.
It's not just that, but I think yes, totally, and a lot of people turning around saying, "I thought people would be there for me." and
No,
weather.
absolutely.
And it's caused a havoc for so many, thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of people.
It's a very sad world we live in at the moment.
It is,
man.
but let's concentrate on Mr. Ed.
So Ed, so
Good
7
sitcom.
years ago, you came out of brain surgery. Okay, you were on some intensive pharmaceutical medication. Cannabis was nowhere near your life because you were a good patient and you were listening to what your doctor said you should do, and you were living like you were being supported by your family post brain surgery. And how long until the seizures started to become worse again? It was like a year or so later.
It took a year for them to materialize into completely debilitating.
So we're on 6 years ago now. So six years ago, the seizures started properly. Now, when the seizures restarted properly, were they worse or less worse than pre-surgery?
Less worse. I think what was worse is the fear. It was like, wow, it's actually happening again. I just
what a huge disappointment, and what a huge disappointment for you.
Exactly.
Horrible.
Exactly.
Horrible. And without prying, which I can't resist.
He loves to do.
I do. Well, no, it's about human.
So
it's about.
It's ridiculous. It's almost like you're a guest on his show. It's almost like he needs that. It's ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, how dare he? How dare he?
Cry away.
Have you finished? Have you finished?
I'm done.
No, it's about human interaction. The whole thing about men's radio and women's radio, it's about human interaction. We're not looking for glib little sound bites and all the rest of it they do on other radio stations and TV things. It's not what it's about. Your family, you hear the word brain surgery, your stomach turns to water. Your family must have been terrified.
Yeah, I think that absolutely. There's no better word to use.
Horrible.
But always have been so supportive of me. Have just let me be. Let me just discover what's best for me, and let me just try and attain happiness, which to me is what's most important.
If we knew that,
we'd
all bottle it.
How beautiful.
Exactly right. Yeah.
We'd all bottle it and sell it to Tesco's. Here's the thing. Right, so you've come out of brain surgery. Even saying it gives me the shivers. And to your absolute, horrible disappointment, blow me down, the very thing you thought was going to be fixed isn't fixed.
So what did your neurologist then say?
They couldn't really offer more other than it's, again, to increase the pharmaceuticals. I deep down, we can move straight back to the cannabis. I want the progression, because I want to. It's all about the fact that cannabis is such a last resort medicine. It's very important for people to know the ridiculous things that patients go through before they're given a little bit of hope. And it's very important that the audience out there and the world out there knows what you've gone through before you've gone to cannabis, because it shows how misinformed the entire system is to cut people's brains open, feed them cocktails of different pharmaceutical medications before giving them something which might actually, or in everyone's case so far, has actually helped. And it's just that's maybe I don't want to jump straight to cannabis, because I know we can get a lot more shock and horror out of your story. Directly after the surgery, there was some support. There wasn't a huge amount. So once a year had passed and I hadn't been in constantly in contact with them, it was quite hard to get back in the system. And then by the time I'd had a grand mal seizure, I hadn't really been communicating.
With your neurologist?
Exactly.
But why would your neurologist not take care of you? The fact that you've just gone in for a brain surgery, why is there not like
they're just so overrun.
But why is there not like a generic email that gets sent out once every month? If you need us to call you, respond to this email, someone will call you. You've just had brain surgery. You are important to us. As in, that's all it's got to say.
If you want to speak to somebody, it's not a problem. But it's using the tools that they have. When it comes to especially epilepsy like mine, or because I was post-surgery, I just wanted a scan. I wanted data to give me confidence that I wasn't going to die, that it wasn't something more than I was used to. That it was just something that I was used to coping with, that it was just going to be the seizures. I have to put it in perspective. I was running a restaurant at this time. I think my partner was pregnant with our firstborn. So everything was just coming down on me in the space of a couple of years, and I didn't know what to process first. So when it came to the NHS, it was, I just want to have some scans. Please just scan me. And they couldn't do it. So I just carried on as usual. Carried on taking the pharmaceuticals.
I know we've all got to save the NHS, and I'm the last in the queue. I'm not going to bash them. They do absolutely the best they can. Couldn't or wouldn't? Which was it, Ed?
They
couldn't give you a scan or wouldn't give you a scan.
I think it's a little bit of both, because in a certain sense they don't understand what they're dealing with. There's only so much they can say. And there's also a little bit, I would imagine, of fear that maybe they didn't remove everything they thought they had or wanted to. But I don't want to make assumptions. The individual, the face-to-face care you get in regards to the people is what is incredible on the NHS. The way I was fast, it's only really technically took me a year to get from the initial scans of potential surgery candidate to having the surgery, all on the NHS. Unbelievable. But
you said your NHS nurse is incredible, right?
She's
you mentioned this so many times about how your NHS nurse is insanely good. But the problem is that it's neurologist time. And you didn't even say your neurologist was bad. You just said the time. And it's so hard to find the time. And like
the specialist. And to even in what category do I fit? It's once you've seen a neurologist, there are specialist epileptologists, but I doubt there's that many at the NHS. And it's the same old question, I'm assuming.
It's hard. And of course, just to add to this, it's a slight diversion, but you'll see my point. That was pre-pandemic, pre-COVID-19.
Yes.
We are now 5.3 million procedures behind at the NHS. Mm-hmm. So all the Eds out there and all the Ed Wieners out there, there's now a queue of 5.3 million procedures ahead of you. That is terrifying.
Absolutely,
because they can never catch that up. It's impossible.
Never going to catch.
It's impossible. You can't. You just simply can't do it.
Not enough doctors on.
There's not even if you work.
Not enough.
No, you're going to work 24/7.
Speaking to the staff, they seem almost resigned to that in a certain respect. Not resigned to that, but yeah, they're being as sympathetic as they can be.
Yeah, sure.
But there's more important things to do.
Can I ask a question? So your seizures have started like 6 years ago. Seizures have started coming back. And you're finding, communication quite hard, don't really know where to go. And this is where you started to slowly start consume cannabis again for your recovery post seizures, right?
Exactly. It's important to note cognitively, and I was better. Post surgery, my mind was working better, but the seizures were coming back and they were just getting worse. Exactly.
Fine. And you started consuming cannabis again, but this is funny. Because you were terrified, right?
You were more than terrified.
So I've written this down
as if I'd had the Daily Mail thrown into my eyes.
So basically, like as someone, because like I remember being a kid with you, man. We were kids. We were kids together. It's like it was just. I remember that you stopped smoking. I remember you moved away from cannabis, and I remember when you moved back towards it. But I also remember that you had this whole negative demonization of cannabis, and you had that stigma attached to it, which neurologists believe that it's only going to make epilepsy worse. It's only going to make your convulsions worse. It can only bring on psychosis, etc.
They couldn't answer any of those questions. So I would just have liked to have known, is there a higher risk I could hurt myself now using cannabis that you've cut some of my brain out? I don't know. It'd just be nice to have that data, I suppose.
And also they probably feel it's not a question they particularly want to answer.
Not at all.
Of course, no one wants that responsibility, and they need the data to back it up.
See, Ed, that's the point, because we live in a society, and I'm not rushing to their defences on my white Charger, but they don't want to. Well, you told Mr. Granger it was going to be okay. Well, I thought it would be okay. Well, now look at him. So they don't want
exactly
that.
Right.
You got to live in. We have to live in the real world with these.
Especially when they are sending me to buy illicit product, if they were to ever say,
But question, so why did you do it, Ed? It's like the only dick question I'm going to ask you. I know why you did it. I know why you did it. I have to ask you the question. Like, why did you do it?
Sometimes we have to do things for ourselves
Sorry for
against what
laughing.
other people might tell us is right or wrong.
But if you were so scared and you were so, like, how did you go from being the perfect patient to being like, you know what, screw it, I'm gonna smoke a spliff. It's the only thing that will help me.
I guess I started seeking different education. I really started looking into it, and there was a wealth of information coming from America and from Israel. Just Charlotte's Web story. I think that was quite dominant at the time. It was becoming
Getting massive, right?
It was flipping in the press. It was getting a different.
And I
angle from the
wonder,
press.
yeah, I get that, and I wonder if there's also another part of you which I could totally relate to, which you'd say, "Oh, sod it! What's the worst? I mean, look what's happened to me. What's the worst
Exactly.
going to happen?
Also very true.
My head's not going to fall off, so give it a go."
Very
I
true.
get that.
There's also the important point of, what cannabis actually did for Ed, which is also very important. So when you started consuming cannabis again, what did it actually do for you?
I suppose most importantly, it gave me the independence to just function better again.
Who's in an airplane?
Me.
Fine, that makes sense. I'm thinking it's like Russ has literally jumped into the airplane.
After first time since 2004. Go on.
So yeah, what did cannabis do for you? You said it gave you the ability to function again.
To be in control of how I can attempt to control my ailment. It gave me control again. It gave me independence. It gave me freedom. There is no pharmaceutical that when I'm having a bad day, even though I've fully dosed up on the pharmaceuticals they've given me, I can just reach out to make me feel better.
And do you actually find that it actually makes you feel better?
Yes.
And as someone who's gone
function
through the system, who's tried countless medications, who decided to step away from cannabis based on doctor's advice, you don't regret at all making that decision to have that first joint again, do you?
No. In conjunction with the correct pharmaceuticals, for me personally, cannabis helps.
Now we've got to stress, and I will do my sort of men's radio disclaimer,
Always.
that this is a personal decision by Ed. It's not
Exactly
something
right.
that we're endorsing as a radio station. I'm not endorsing it as a person. This is to explore, and this is why the show, which is all Ollie's idea, is so revolutionary and breaking so many boundaries and smashing down so many doors. But as I said, it's not something that we're not saying, hey, go out and get off your face. This is a personal story by one individual, and of course it is up to each and every one of you. You make up your own minds. I just want to say that. But Ed has been very clear that he hasn't said, oh, I'm going to get rid of all my pharmaceuticals and I'm going to go down this route, because we've had some of that with our guests and it's worked for them. So it's a miracle. But Ed has been very, very clear, and I just want to reiterate that he has kept to his medicinal regime as well.
Especially since having brain surgery. It's very post-brain surgery, silly not to. Go ahead on.
No, I was just saying, like you always talk about how it's like the symbiotic relationship between your cannabis and your pharmaceuticals, and you really do believe that if you remove the cannabis, you're screwed. If you remove the pharmaceuticals, you're equally screwed. And you think that, like, you always talk about this balance, and it's really important. I've said it to him many times. I go, look, why don't you just cut out the pharmaceuticals? Like, just do it. Just cut out the farmers. Like, if you think they're hurting you, cut them out. Just to say, and he's always turned around and said, no, the pharmaceuticals do something, the cannabis does something else, and it's all about that relationship. Now, a lot of the epileptic patients we've had on will talk about how they'll take an epileptic medication alongside the cannabis medications, and it's this combi medication, this symbiotic relationship between the two compounds, which actually makes a huge difference.
I've had epilepsy medication that's turned me into a demon before. And I've had stuff that's turned me almost into a rock where I can't move. But after 20 years, I think that I've finally found a good balance. I'm only taking 2 different pharmaceuticals, and yeah.
When you say turns you into a completely, does it change your personality or make you angry or?
Absolutely. The whole basis of, I think, the chemistry behind epilepsy drugs usually is to change your brain chemistry. What I'm taking now is more aligned with a nootropic, so it's just more balanced for me. But there's so many different drugs. I think I've taken 13 now.
Right.
And also over the years, you metabolize them. You build a tolerance to the pharmaceuticals.
Oh, very, very much so.
And
very
they
much so.
They can only increase to a certain point. I've had episodes in my epilepsy career where I've gone into seizures because my liver's overdosed on certain active chemicals. So it's just turned my brain the other way.
Crazy, right?
Yeah.
I was actually going to get onto that in a second, but I mean, I'm glad you brought that up. It's so important.
That was a mistake because of the combination of two drugs. There was an active chemical that wasn't calculated correctly. So
it was doing damage to your liver and it caused damage to your body. Yeah.
It made me have seizures, a different kind of seizure that I'd never had before.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Also, this was at the beginning of lockdown, stress on top of that. The same function, just
crazy, right?
Do you still have your restaurant? Is that still going?
No, I've sold it, mainly due to the epilepsy. It just wasn't possible to.
No, that's what I wanted. I just wanted to know whether it's possible to sort of lead that side of your life, but I'm guessing not.
At that time, no, it wasn't. At that time, no.
I think it's quite important to say that there is a certain life which you can lead, but it's all about not having the stress. I think that's the one thing I've seen from being buddies with Ed is like he's got kids, you know, he had a wife, you know what I mean? Like he's got like this, he has a life, you know what I mean? He has a real life, you know. It's just about finding that balance between, you know, what you can take onto yourself and what you shouldn't take onto yourself. And running a restaurant is a lunatic thing to do.
It's very it's a stressful career.
Even if you're completely healthy, never open a restaurant. You will go insane. It's just it's the hardest thing in the world, right?
Yeah, that's good advice for every human.
It's a
good
tough
advice
thing
for every human. Do not open a restaurant. Yeah.
Or go into the music industry. Don't do
seriously,
either.
or don't go into the
terrible.
CBD industry either. It is a killer. So seriously, just, you know, work for Amazon, get your paycheck, be happy, keep the system going. That's a joke. Anyway, so 5 years ago...
can I tell you why I'm laughing? This is so stupid. My doorbell rang earlier today. Amazon guy. He's got a parcel, so I'm trying to deliver next door, but they're not in. Can I deliver it with you? And I said, yeah, fine. I said, here's an idea. Why don't you put it through their letterbox? It just fitted. Of course it would. And I just thought that's just so silly. But he was very nice, but it just made me laugh.
Go to disturb the neighbour.
Yeah, just go.
So 5 years ago, you started consuming even more cannabis alongside your pharmaceutical medication, medicinally, therapeutically, habitually. However, you were sourcing all of your cannabis from street dealers, and therefore you were a criminal.
Yeah.
How did that make you feel? How did it make you feel that you, post-surgery, went to the doctors cut out part of your brain, giving you a whole bunch of pharmaceuticals, and now they've made you become a criminal, okay, in order to keep yourself alive?
I'm sorry, I got to jump in. I got to jump.
Phrase that right, have I?
I got to jump in. You cannot say it is not. I can't allow that to slip by, for God's sake, and say that the doctors turned him into a criminal. Ed made a personal decision, quite separate from any medical advice, to follow that route. That is not. You can't lay that at the doors of the medical profession. It wouldn't be fair.
Absolutely right. But I made that decision.
That's right.
So you made that decision. How did that make you feel after you've been through this system, after you tried to be perfect patient, you made this decision to make this change in your life where you actually started consuming cannabis again, but it was all done illegally. How did you feel?
It's the worst thing I could. The feeling, you quite literally just feel like a criminal, and I couldn't be further from it. I have two young children. Standing outside my house waiting for a car to pull up.
Oh God!
With the fear that it could potentially be the police, and I would be having to call my parents or my wife to come and collect me from a prison cell. I think it says it all, especially after what I've been through. The phrase Ollie used in regards to making me go, that's how I felt, that I'm being made to be a criminal.
Horrible.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is I sometimes don't think before I speak, so I very much apologise if I've offended anyone out there.
You haven't offended. No. I just
saying it. It's not fair that you always apologise for me. I should apologise for myself.
It's absolutely fine.
When it comes to the NHS, when it comes to doctors and nurses, they just want to help their patients. Their hands
Yes,
are
they
tied
do.
by a system, and the system is very complex. It's chaos, and it's quite hard to manage chaos.
It is beyond complicated, and at the coal face, if you like, when you meet the nurses and the doctors, they couldn't be better.
They're
That's
incredible
their
people.
life. That's what
Incredible
they've
people.
dedicated their life to do. They could go and work
Every
in
individual.
Waitrose or something. They don't.
Exactly
They
right.
go and do that.
The 3 times I've been in hospital in my life, I've actually had a great time, thanks to the nurses. So I'm just saying, they've always made it very enjoyable. I got beaten up once, and it was really fun. The nurses made it fun. Okay, so I'm just saying, God bless the nurse, and that's actually true. Got stories of it. It was a lot of fun. So, Edward, you were using street-grade cannabis. Was it always helpful? Was it very hit and miss? Did you find that you had to re-educate yourself on strains and almost find a new supply chain? As in, what was it? Was it hard?
I'd always, up until that point, I would just see what was there. I would just indiscriminately use it because I had no education. I had no understanding of what. I just knew that it worked, that it helped me. So that's when I really started to learn about the plant and the different aspects. The CBD element actually became important to me. And even the strain selection. I have to be careful what I smoke. It has to be organic. It has to be clean. It's almost counterproductive if I'm smoking
Because I don't touch it with a barge pole. So a car drives up. And I'm speaking with naivety here. How do you know what you're getting? Because it's not like ordering a pizza. Well, it kind of is, but it isn't ordering a pizza. You can't say I want, chorizo topping, and it turns up.
You don't, but it's similar to ordering a pizza from somewhere you've never been before every single time, because you don't really know what you're going to get. But
except, I'm sorry, it's probably a crappy analogy, but let's just do a stupid analogy. I order a cheese and ham pizza because I know that's going to work with my drugs, right? And suddenly something else turns up. I can see that. I can physically see it and go, I don't want to eat this because I happen to be allergic to artichokes or pineapple, whatever. Doesn't matter. You can't see that when the drugs are being delivered to you, can you?
No. And
so it's like Russian roulette for you, surely.
There are so many elements that could make that a product that could make me worse than better.
Yes.
Because I don't know where it's been grown. I don't know how it's been handled. I don't know what's been put in the soil to create the product.
Besides pesticides.
I don't know the quantity of medication in it.
You don't know if it's going to be a 10%, 15%, 20%
you don't know anything
harvest.
about
you don't know
it.
what the spread of cannabinoids are. You don't know who's grown it. You don't know if it's... Sorry.
THC can trigger seizures. That's a fact.
Yes.
So if you smoke something that's too strong, you are being counterproductive. But also, if that's your only option and you are having an extremely bad day, you might be stuck in a cycle. And I'll openly admit, cannabis can be counterproductive for certain people.
If it's
That's
not
important.
used correctly.
This is not a cure-all for epilepsy.
And also, with the greatest respect to drug dealers, if you like, well, that's what they are. You're not. It's not like popping into Holland and Barrett. They've got a bit of training. These people just want to make a load of money. I get that. That's their industry, but they really don't care.
No, and they never would.
And they're not going to.
And also, the whole point is a drug dealer is unfortunately a businessman. He buys a product and he wants to sell said product. So if you call him up and you're like, what do you have in stock? He's going to be like, I've got the best stuff. Why? Because that's what you want to hear as the customer. You're going to go and buy it. And whether or not it's the best stuff for you, drug dealer's made his sale, but he's not a healthcare provider. He doesn't.
No, he doesn't give a monkeys.
People don't think about what people are using this for. There's 10.8 million recreational users in the UK, and there's 1.6 active medical cannabis users, which means there's 5 times, 6 times more people out there who want to consume everything, as opposed to people like Ed who need the right thing. And that's just why, like, Ed has actually recently managed to obtain himself a legal cannabis prescription. He went through Project 21, and now he's consuming real cannabis. He's consuming real medicinal grade cannabis, and he's no longer a criminal. So round of applause for Ed.
Good.
He's now a patient, which is the most important. But in order to get to that point, he had to educate himself. He had to learn that this was right for him. You know, like you spent a long time like improving your diet, learning about what to put into your body, learning about like so many changes in your life. I'm reading all of the notes which we've written down. I'm curious. We've got 15 minutes left. I want to talk about something.
Blimey. God,
I know
quick.
it's gone fast.
Boom.
So I might skip that.
No. I don't think you should. I don't think you should, because
Fine.
there's people watching all over the world, and
So
listening about
let's try
Ed's
and get
story.
through- let's try and get through
It's
the
hard.
last
We'll
4
have to get Ed.
points.
Please, when you come back after your world tour, the Kiss End of the Road tour with Ollie Mammon as a support act. Ollie Mammon with Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley.
Dude, that'd be the best day ever.
We'll get you back. It would be the best day
Imagine.
ever. It would be the greatest. It would be the greatest.
With the
day.
face paint and stuff.
It would be absolutely marvellous, to be honest with you. I'd do anything to drum with them. Anyway, that's not the point. Please come back, because this is important stuff.
Done yet,
So-
Ross. Stop kicking him off.
No. I'm saying I want him to come back, because there's a lot
would
to
love
discuss.
to.
Oh, great.
would love
Thank you very much. So
Can I carry on?
you had to educate yourself. Like, in what ways?
Just read as much as possible. Luckily, Oliver understands a lot, and there's other people that help me learn. But yeah, and through, I suppose, trial and error.
And
Because my hands are bound by. I can
I'm
research
ignorant
as
about.
much as I want.
So
I'm
it was
ignorant about this.
4
Where would
years
you
ago.
read it? Where do you go to read?
It's
I don't
a
mean
wealth
the
of it.
library. I mean, where do you
online.
start looking?
Online, luckily, there are legal markets, and there is a better understanding now about cannabis, so you can at least begin to touch the surface for yourself, but a majority is trial and error. There's 2 dominant kinds of cannabis strains, sativa and indica. One does not work for me at all. It makes me anxious, and it's almost counterproductive to the seizures, because the anxiety might bring on seizures. Then there's indica, which helps me in a much better way than the pharmaceuticals.
So you have to do literally drug trials, if you like, on yourself, and monitor yourself and keep your fingers crossed.
And it's that there's millions of strains within those 2 categories. So
Also, the complicated thing in today's world is there's so much crossbreeding by geneticists between sativa and indica. They design indicas which smell like sativas, and they design sativas that smell like indicas. So in case you want to smoke something that tastes doesn't taste fruity, but gives you the effect of a fruity strain. So it doesn't taste like lemons, but you want to have the high of a lemon haze. They create that now. So it used to be 5 years ago, if you smelt a bag of weed, you would know what you were getting. If you smelt different cannabis strains, you could almost like the nose knew. Now they do these hybrid strains where you can smell it, you smell one thing, but actually the effect you're going to get from it is something else. So there's
can
so
I break
much.
it?
Sorry.
Can I break it down for a bystander like myself? If I relate it to let's relate it to single malt whiskey.
No, it's easier. They started to make tomatoes that taste like apples and apples that taste like tomatoes.
All right, fine.
Okay, and what happens is you used to be able to look at a tomato and think you're getting a tomato. But now when you look at a tomato and you get an apple, who knows where you stand? And when you start walking through markets and you want tomatoes for your salad, but actually you end up with a bag of apples, what are you supposed to do?
And that is totally beautifully explained. Thank you.
That is unfortunately the cannabis market today, because what happens is someone goes to buy their lemons and they end up with their pears, but they don't want their pears. They want their lemons, or vice versa. And this is what's made it so difficult on the street. It's a massive, massive problem out there, because it's no longer, like being a strain hunter, understanding what's right for you, knowing how terpenes affect a strain doesn't even mean anything anymore. Because, the strain is backed up by other genetics, which give it a different direction. Even though the terpenes say it's going one way, it goes a different way. And it's all just a little bit confusing.
It might even be in a bag that says it's something, but it's not most likely not.
And then another thing is street cannabis is bred to be as strong as possible. It's almost like, imagine a bottle of vodka.
Recreational. Driven,
imagine all bottles. Yeah, imagine all bottles of vodka were about 20%. That was the standard. But then someone's like, you know what? I'm going to make it 60%. Why? So when you drink it, you get more messy. People who like getting messy will drink that vodka. 10.8 million people in the UK just want to get messy. 1.6 million people need the help. And
Need to not
unfortunately,
get messy.
need to not get messy.
Need to unmess, if anything.
And
Exactly
the market is catering only for the 10.8. It's not catering for the Edwards. It's not catering for people like me with my Tourette syndrome. And I've got the similar sorts of problems to Ed at the moment, where I buy things and I'm like, all right, this is not doing good for me. You know, there goes my anxiety. And I thought my nose told me something, and I am an expert. I mean, I'm very good at what I do, and
so
I still get tricked.
It makes you think, if you want to understand the nub of all of this, there's a wonderful book called Freakonomics. Freakonomics.
I know Freakonomics.
A major chapter on it about the drug industry, and to understand the problems that Ollie is describing and Ed has experienced, just get this book. It's not a big tome, but it's a fascinating book on the economics of it. Of what real society is like, not what you get on, the news. So are you still, would you say, Ed, how can I put this politely, like a work in progress? Is it stabilized? What's the deal?
He's just got
I've just got my legal cannabis prescription. I'm on
This
Project
is wonderful
21,
news.
and the product is consistent so far.
Project 21, everybody, listen to that. Very important. If you want what Ed's
Project 21?
The system is not perfect yet, but the doctors I get to speak to, they know what they're talking about, and they're more understanding of my needs, and they're willing to listen. They're not gaslighting my claims, essentially. They seem a bit overrun, but the product is clean. It is the right percentages, and I know what I'm getting.
Let me just ask that again, because I don't want to run past that point. Because of Project 21, you know what you're getting. To use that wonderful advertising phrase, it does what it says on the tin.
Exactly. It's consistent.
Right. Okay.
It's consistent.
And it's Project. Is it Project 21, Ollie?
Yeah. So Project 21 is. Do you remember Professor Mike Barnes?
I very much.
Yeah. So Professor Mike Barnes, he's medical lead of Project 21 now, and it was set up in like 2018, 2019. The aim of Project 21 is to get 21,000 patients or 20,000 patients in the UK actively consuming cannabis by 2021. Now, the problem is COVID unfortunately caused a little bit of delay. They're currently on about 1,500 patients. However, they want you to call up and sign up. They want you to contact them. Ed's biggest problem was that for the last 2 years, they weren't accepting epileptic patients. Me and Ed had a conversation maybe 4 months ago. I was like, bro, just try again. Just try and try and try. Try until they literally ban your phone number. And he called me the next day. He goes, I think I'm in. So, I mean, it is the way forward. It's, as Ed will tell you, it's affordable. Yet you're guided, you're nurtured. You're dealing with someone who is working with you for research purposes, which means you're not a dollar in his pocket. You're a number on his screen. And being a number on his screen is one thing, but at least he wants that number to mean something, as opposed to he wants to have more cushion in his back pocket. And I think it's quite important. You're not feeding a black market. So that's also important.
Let me just belt through some of the messages. Yep, get it. Let's belt through some of the messages. People are being very, very kind here. Chrissy Richards from Spain, Ed. So we've got Edinburgh, we've got Santa Monica, California. We've now got Spain. Hi, everyone. Good to hear you. Question from Chrissy Richards. Can CBD help my hearing loss? Oh, just discovered it's not good. Well, crank it up. I doubt it. But anyway, all right. Anna Barbosa Lugo, Project 21, that's now been explained. Percy Gadas, I hope I pronounced it right, Percy. Very informative, thank you. That's absolutely our pleasure. And Veronica Curran, you don't know in what strength or strain as women. It's scary. Finding relevant information, there is just so much out there. However, I have the option for private now, but the cost is difficult. Absolutely right.
Try Project 21. Just try
Project 21 is more
affordable
than
what everyone keeps on saying. Even Philip Anthony Bevington, the only reason he does it is through Project 21 is because it's affordable. Private prescriptions cost a fortune, black market costs a fortune, but Project 21's this nice middle ground. Like, what's the price difference, Ed, between the private prescriptions you were quoted, the street market you were paying, the street price you were paying, and what you're paying now?
Coincidentally, the street market price seems to be aligned with the private market price. And Project 21 is half.
50%.
Yes.
And
50%.
by the way, all over the world, please I'm not being facetious, do not confuse Project 21 with Agenda 21. Don't start looking up Agenda 21. You will get into an absolute rabbit hole of a nightmare.
That's a deep rabbit hole.
It's a deep rabbit hole. You don't want to go there. You want Project 21, quite separate.
Yeah, and like Professor Nart and Professor Mike Barnes, they're the two medical leads. They're incredible people. I mean, what they're going to do for the patients in the UK is it's fantastic. It really is. Now, Ed, pre you getting your prescription, you were using CBD oils as well, and you were using like a broad spectrum CBD product. That's also very similar product to what a lot of the epileptic children are using nowadays, the Bedrolites and the anti-epileptic medications. Are also broad spectrum, high CBD broad spectrum products.
Black paste, yeah.
Yeah, it's not something you were offered, was it? It's not something you can get through the system, or is it?
I'm not. I think, yes, they can offer it to me, but I think they're finding it hard to get it into the country, and also it's not of the quality that I was used to using. There is a good quantity of CBD in the flower they're giving me.
That's good.
And as it stands, I'm good. But yeah, they don't seem to be able to get as good quality CBD as I was using before. I mean, maybe you could understand that better.
Maybe I should speak to them.
Yeah, maybe it's coming shortly.
No, it's hard. I tell you what, it's the laws and the parameters. I do believe that because the CBD market is a legal market around the world, there are less people dealing with medicinal grade CBD. And in order for a product to be sold through a medicinal system, it needs to have that medicinal stamp. Now, there are many farms in Europe, in Israel, in America dealing with medicinal grade, full spectrum cannabis products like what you're using. And I believe that's why. And I do believe that there's a big API push at the moment, an active pharmaceutical ingredient push by CBD, CBG manufacturers around the world in order for their product to be able to be sold and given to people like you. The issue is because of the freedom in the marketplace up until, well, or still now, you can theoretically go and buy that product on the street for a similar price that they would be able to supply it to you. So that whole idea of they don't need to compete with themselves. Do you understand what I mean?
I personally won't take anything synthetic either. So it's just
fair play. Now, Ed, what would you have to say about the system? Like, what would you say? Like, how long did the journey take you? Like, was it easy? Would you recommend other people listening to go down that route, to go through Project 21? You know, what would you say to other, mothers and fathers and brothers who might have a loved one who's going through what you've been through?
100%, I would reach out to them, or at least an official organization, before trying anything else, because the information's there now. There is no need to put yourself in a difficult situation, and you can be helped rather than be put in a position I was in, where it's essentially just try for myself. I'm blessed to have met you many years ago, and other people
I'm blessed to have met you too, my
are
friend.
in the community and have helped me, but I can't imagine how it would be to be. I've watched a good few of your shows, and it breaks my heart.
It's horrible. I had no idea, of any of this issue, and all these guests. You come away and you're thinking, oh my God, how have they got the strength to put one foot in front of the other?
It's one thing. I'm in awe of them. The decisions for myself.
I'm in awe of them.
People with children, you can now go down the more legitimate routes. Seek proper help.
Don't go through the black market, which might end up disappearing. The problem is you can find an incredible supplier, but he's so at risk of disappearing. He's so at risk of getting in trouble. Then when he gets in trouble, you've lost your supply. Or God forbid you get in trouble, what's the chance he's still going to sell to you? Because then you're a risk. So, I mean, it's
hopefully
dangerous.
Eventually there will be sense, and we'll understand that perhaps there is a good use for it, and we should have complete control of it. And it is just a plant, let's be honest, that if managed correctly genetically, can be relatively or quite safe for majority of the population, more so than alcohol. But as it currently stands, well, the industry, this is what it is, collects their data, seek the help that's there.
It's been an extraordinary 44 weeks so far. I look forward to another 444 weeks. with Ollie and the ABC of CBD. As I said, it really was an experiment for us. I thought, well, let's give it a go. No idea it was going to be so fascinating. There were a radio award in America, which is thrilling, as he's never done radio before. I think it's fantastic. Ed, you have been exemplary. Thank you for being so open. Thank you for being so honest.
Thank you for sharing.
It's really, really, really marvellous. Ollie, have a wonderful world tour with KISS, with Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons. We look forward to pictures of you in the makeup. Next week, a brand new show while Ollie's away. And I know you're going to love it. Until then, stay safe.
God bless you guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.